Hello and welcome to my watch reviews. Well, on the bench today is a brand called OLTO-8. Now, you might not have heard of OLTO-8. Let me tell you that they design watches that are usually really far out of the box. Now, my very first watch review was of OLTO-8. It was on my Retro Watches channel. I'll leave a link for that below in case you want to check it out. And like I say, they design things a little bit out of the box. And this was the watch that they did then. It's called the Infinity 2. Proud to say that I've still got it. I still wear it and enjoy it. It's not to everybody's taste. It is utterly bonkers. It's easy to tell the time, although it doesn't look like it might be. But yeah, I really like this one. It's solid and unique, and I really have a taste for the odd watches. Even if I don't wear them, I like to have them in my collection. So this is being a very good piece. So with that in mind, what have they come up with in this box? Let's find out. So we have a cardboard outer packaging to protect it, of course. In the drawer here there is a hang tag, and there is a warranty card. It's offering 2 years of warranty, but it isn't stamped. Now, they haven't launched this watch yet, so perhaps that's why, but just thought I'd make a point of that very quickly. So if we get rid of that, what we're left with is this really cool travel case, and I like this. It isn't leather, so if you're vegan, I suppose that's going to help you. It won't help you that much when you see the watch because it has a leather strap, but here we go. That is what we're looking at. That is fantastic. This is what they call a wandering hours watch. So it's another interesting way to tell the time. And some of the big Swiss brands are making these and charging a small fortune. So it wasn't long before the smaller companies would come up with their own versions for the people like ourselves to afford to buy them. So I really like the look of this already. And so if you do, stick around. We'll take it outside, get you some good shots, tell you about how it works, how to tell the time, of course, more importantly. Stick it on the microscope and stick it on the Timegrapher, see how good it is. Here we are out in the daylight where, of course, it holds no prisoners. Now, OLTO-8, they like to name their watches, and this one's called the Roto, and it's getting its inspiration from casinos. And you know what? I can kind of see that from the wheels with the different numbers on, sort of look like dice perhaps, and then the outer track could also be a roulette wheel. So yes, plenty of inspiration. However, these wandering hour watches are nothing new. This sort of way of telling the time has been around for hundreds of years from what I can see. There's even a very old pocket watch that has a similar sort of way of telling the time. So definitely nothing new, like I say, but it's been brought into the modern era now with lots and lots of brands doing it, from high-end Swiss to micro brands such as OLTO-8. But let's answer the most important question first. How do you tell the time? Well, as the name suggests, the hours wander. So if you concentrate on the 4, this is speeded up, by the way. The 4 is now travelling towards the 60, which is like 4:59. The 3 will flick over to 6 if you look at the 6 o'clock, and that will be lining up the next hour after 5. So if we go back round to the 5, which is now approaching 5:05, kind of hope that makes a bit of sense. It just basically wanders around across that scale there. That scale is 120 degrees, which basically means that you're getting one rotation here per 3 hours. So that's quite interesting in itself mechanically. More on the mechanics later, but let's feast our eyes for a moment on that dial, because the dial, to me at least, is really interesting. This watch is not an ugly watch. It's not a confusing watch. I think once you've learned how to tell the time, as I've just shown you, that's very straightforward. Now, not having a second hand, you're not looking to the nearest second. You're not really looking to the nearest minute either when you're telling the time. But then quite often when I'm looking at the time at work, it's 1:15, it's 10:02. I'm never really, I'm rounding things up or down rather than actually saying the right time. And this is a watch more for a conversation, for an interest, but it's offering a lot of depth, isn't it? Every time you look at it, you see something a little bit different or fascinating. I like the way the discs rotate. I like the way it flicks over at 6 o'clock to line up the next one. It's all fairly simplistic on how it does that, but it's still marvellous at the same time. It gives you a lot of depth as well. It's got a big crystal to cover all that, which also again is offering contrast and depth. I like the font that they've used for the scale. Just the whole layout of it is fascinating, at least for me. Definitely going to be interested to see what you guys think of it, because my tastes are really far and wide. Here we are looking at the side of the case. Now the case is stainless steel and it's highly polished throughout, so it's extremely reflective, and as a result it doesn't make it easy for filming. But what I like, and what is pretty obvious, is those side cutouts. They're absolutely a lovely little feature. It looks big on the camera, of course, but on the watch it's subtle. It's actually very nice bit of detail. I'm trying to think, in all the vintage watches that I've got, I don't think I've actually seen that feature before. So yeah, definitely something new, something I like. Also, you've got that sign crown with the 8 on it as well, and then you've got that giant sapphire crystal at the top. It has got some AR coating, but it is so domed it does reflect everything quite a lot. Flip the watch over and it reveals a lovely display case back. I like display case backs, and this one is showing off a Miyota 9039 movement, which is actually decorated quite a lot, so it is very nice to see. We'll have a look at that a bit closer later on. The 9039 is a high beat movement, so it's 28,800 vibrations per hour, which would normally give you a lot smoother tick, but of course we haven't got a second hand, so we can't enjoy that movement. But as a result of a high beat, you're getting a more consistent accuracy movement. What I also like on the case back is it's got some writing. It's telling us it's sapphire crystal, all stainless steel, roto and so on, which is refreshing to see, because a lot of the reviews I've done recently of other brands, the case backs are completely sterile. Now before I show it you on the wrist, I better talk about the sizing. It's a good size. It's not massive. This thing is 39mm, which I think is a lovely sweet spot for a little dress watch like this. You've got 20mm lug width, so strap changes are fine. Because it comes on this leather strap, it's okay. I think it would suit a better quality strap perhaps. The lug to lug is 46mm, so again going to fit on the wrist quite comfortably. Plus you've got a lot of curl in the lugs as well to conform to your wrist. Thickness, well, it's 12.6mm thick, and again most of that is that huge crystal. But there you go, sizing I think is lovely. So let's now show you the wrist shot, of course. Here we get to see the signed buckle and the leather strap. It's got a semi sheen to it, and my wrist is 7 inches, which is 18 centimeters, and that's what it looks like. It fits lovely. I keep saying it, plenty of interest the more you look at it. I don't think it's ugly at all. I think it's very nice. So that takes us to the Lume shot, which is an absolute tragedy. At first you can see here it glows really nicely. The problem is it's painted on, and it's painted on very thinly, and you will see this in real time how much it fades so very quickly. So already in this brief sentence we have lost the hours, and without the hours it is now just a mix of numbers. So if you were trying to look at this in the middle of the night, well, you wouldn't have a clue what time it is. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you don't want to know the time. But it is very disappointed on the Lume stakes. Now I get it, because it's painted on, there's not a lot of it, but even the camera is struggling right now to try and pick that up, and it will fade to absolutely nothing within just over a minute. There we go, my camera's desperately trying to focus and it can't, and that is the end of the Lume, sadly. In a moment I'm going to put the watch on the Timegrapher so we can see how good the movement is, and then I'll put it on the microscope for a closer inspection as well. But need to discuss the price. So OLTO-8, this is their landing page for this watch. They have not officially announced the price because they launch all of their models on Kickstarter. Now what they have told me, it's going to be in the $300 range, and that could be $300, that also could be $399. They have not declared what that's going to be. They say the retail price at the end of the Kickstarter campaign would be $559, which is around about £430. Now, I don't think it's worth the top end. I think this is a $300 watch, maybe a little bit more, maybe $350. It is unique. You are getting that Wandering Hours style, which is really, really cool. And let's face it, everybody's doing these, like AP and so on. So you would expect to pay $1,000 for another type of this watch. But I just don't get it at £400. I think it's a bit of a tall order personally. But at $300, more acceptable. So if you are interested in this, of course, you have to sign up here, and then it will announce when the Kickstarter campaign is going to be launched, because I'm going to be interested. It is sometime in July 2023. Just quickly, you can also see from this advertising campaign there's a nice blue dial version, and there's also a green one too. However, I think the black is the pick of the bunch. But there we go, it's an unusual piece, and as a microband there's not going to be that many of these floating around, so you are getting something that you're not really going to see anybody else wearing. Okay, let's go to the bench and see the movement. So Timegrapher time. This is a Miyota 9039 movement. I think they were developed in around about 2018. It's a true no day date movement, so there's no phantom position on the crown or anything like that. And it is, well, kind of high beat, 28,800 vibrations per hour. So let's see what that's going to do. And straight away, well, I'm never happy with beat error. From working on my own watches, of course, I like to tighten beat error up to at least, or the least acceptable I'd take is 0.1. So 0.3 to me needs a little bit more of adjustment. But look at the rate. The rate is 1 second. That is fantastic. Amplitude, I think, is pretty decent for this movement. So straight out the box with a bit of winding, that is really, really good. So as always, let's stress test it. Let's put it in a few different positions. So I'm going to put it to pendant up or crown up. And as always, we're just wanting the trace to stay the same, really. Will give you an indication of the movement's health, and obviously that is realistically, of course, you'd keep it on for 5-10 minutes in each position to really get a good average reading. But errors would show up fairly quickly, I would assume, this way anyway. So this one's always the hard one, the crown down. And again, we're seeing not much deviation. It's still now within 8 seconds a day. That's impressive for a Miyota movement. People never say nice things about Miyota. They are a budget movement, but you know, I can't criticise them. I think, well, looking at this one, other than that beat error, that's performing absolutely perfect, and it will tell great time all day long. It's a shame it hasn't got a second hand, because then you'd see that smoother sweep that you get with these higher beat movements. But equally, a higher beat should mean a bit more accuracy going forwards anyway. So there we are. That's the Timegrapher. Let's get it on the microscope and see it all really close up. So first of all, the rotating discs, you can see there, they're clearly made out of clear plastic, maybe some sort of perspex or something, and everything here has to be really light. You've got to think that this thing is spinning at once rotation every 3 hours. And how do they do that? They must have changed the gear ratios in order to slow the movement or the hands down. but it's also got to carry the weight of all of this. And it's a mystery to me how that is done. I'd love to know. And the watchmaker in me wants to take it all apart. But if you look at those discs and look at the crosses on the top, you know, need a special tool just to remove those for a start. So reluctant to take it apart, but fascinated all the same as to how just a mechanical watch can power the rotation of that and not cause any drag on the movement. Right, so if we look at this pin here, it's quite a simple thing. You can't really, you can just see under the discs there, look at the light, if I hold it up, that you have these sort of little funny cutout shapes. So as this passes over here, we will see the 12 roll over to 3, and then the 3 is carried up to the 0, which would then be 3 o'clock, and then you'll be able to see here the 1 change over to 4 pretty much at the same time. So it's lining everything up as we go along, look. So it's quite simple and straightforward. It's just every time it passes over that thing, it clicks it over. But it's still really, really cool. And yeah, I like the way you tell the time. I mean, it is general. You can't do this to the nearest second, but at a glance, you'll be able to know the time. So that is really, really cool. I like that, well, the burst finish on the dial. Certainly looks good close up. I'm still a little bit annoyed as to what that is down there in the bottom corner. I mean, we are on a microscope, don't forget, and seeing that with your naked eye is, well, you're not going to see it. So I'm not going to give them any less points for that. So hopefully you found that bit quite fascinating. I know I do. I keep looking at this dial and it amazes me. I'm going to flip it over now and we'll have a look at the movement. So here's the OLTO movement, the 9039. It's pretty decent movement. I like OLTOs. Some people don't. They don't like the fact that this rotor can be quite noisy. I haven't heard it on this watch. I hear it like crazy on the other OLTO-8, but this one's a bit quieter. As you can see, 24 joules. I think it's about a 40-hour power reserve. And generally, it's very nice. It's been decorated really well. Look, you've got those nice stripes. Even the rotor has that burst finish on it as well. So it is a budget movement all the same. These are all machine made and assembled. They have to be for the price. But as we've seen on the Timegrapher, it tells remarkably good time. I like the extra attention to detail with the decoration, and even the little reduction wheel there that is gold coloured. That's just transferring the rotor power down into the mainspring. One thing I've done on one of these movements before is blue the screws. I've got a thermal bluing kit, and I'm tempted to try it out on these screws here, in part because, well, it's a clear case back, so it's nice to give it a little bit more decoration, certainly when you can mod it by your own hand. The only trouble is with screws like this, as you can see, they're quite rough finished on the heads. And bluing of screws, if you've got a real high polished screw, it blues up lovely. When they're like this, they don't as much. I think I'll put a shot of a OLTO movement that I've already done. And if I'm feeling like I want to get the kit out later on, then I might just blue these. Perhaps I could do that as a YouTube short. That might be a bit of fun. So there we go. That is the movement, and that is the watch reviewed, really. So let's just cut back and I'll sum this watch up and give you my full opinion. Now, I think you can gather that I really like this watch, but trying to think of any negatives. Well, there's one clearly obvious one, isn't there? The Lume is nothing to write home about. They are trying to say it's Swiss Luminova, but come on, it lasted 2 minutes. I don't care if it's Swiss. You need to apply more if you want it to burn brighter. The other slight niggle I've got is the strap. I'm just not sold on that particular strap. I think it could be a little bit better quality. It's okay, it just doesn't seem to be breaking in. I've wore this watch for 5 days now, and I don't know, it just doesn't feel all that comfortable. But what else? You're getting something that's pretty unique. I love this unconventional way of telling the time. I like the depth that the watch has got. Every time you look at it, you want to look at it a little bit more, just for the sheer cool factor. It is going to start conversations if you show people it. I showed it to a lot of my friends at a watch fair recently, and it did get some conversation there too. So yeah, go check out OLTO-8, see what they got, see what this is going to cost. Let's hope it's in the low 300s when they launch it, because I think that's where the price should be. That's the only other negative, isn't it? $549 full price. I know the next one of these is £600-700, but come on, that's just a bit too much, I feel, anyway, for a watch with a myoto movement. So there we go. If you've enjoyed this review, give it a like, leave comments below. I read them all, try to reply to them all nowadays, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.